Good evening. Jesus. So I finally did it, guys. I not only surpassed over 270 hours in Elden Ring, but I also 100% it too by getting all the Steam achievements. And I haven't done that for a game in God knows how long, probably not since the Xbox 360 days. And by that, I mean playing through some of the Telltale games, minus the ones that didn't save my achievements for some reason. And Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Burning Earth. You know, that one game that we all totally bought as fans of the Avatar series, and not at all because you could get the achievements in less than 5 minutes, right? Sorry, I'm having a stroke. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. So after putting 270 hours into Elden Ring and playing through the game twice while unlocking all the achievements, did I enjoy it? Well, no, it's dog shit and it's easily the worst game I've ever played. Nah, I'm just kidding. I gotta say, it's easily one of my favorite games now. Not just my game of the year from 2022, but perhaps one of my favorite games of all time. Maybe even in the top 5, or even the top 3. And that much should be considered obvious considering how many hours I put into the game. But seriously, this game has been nothing short of incredible. And I've been a fan of the Souls games for a while now, but I never truly got into them like other games. I never got too far in Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Demon's Souls. The most I experienced beforehand was Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne, and I didn't finish the former until like 1 month before Elden Ring's release, and the latter about a couple of months after Elden Ring released. And I'm still holding out hope that a PC port can come, or at the very least, a 60 FPS patch on PS4 Pro and PS5 for Bloodborne. Another time, while I was really excited for Elden Ring, I've become a lot more jaded about the state of gaming within the past couple of years after being let down by overhyped releases such as Watch Dogs 1, Mass Effect Andromeda, especially this one, and Cyberpunk 2077. Although, I actually really liked Cyberpunk, even at launch before Edgerunners came out, but I can't deny that it was severely overhyped and it let a lot of people down. And all the signs were there, and a part of me had a bad feeling about Elden Ring, but I mean, FromSoft has never made a bad game in the Soulsborne series. Even their worst game, Dark Souls 2, was still an incredible game. But when Elden Ring came out, it not only lived up to the hype, but it surpassed it too. And it's very rare to be able to say this about many other games that have come out, other than something like Zelda, although I don't like the new ones personally because I don't like glorified tech demos disguised as open world games, and no, I will not elaborate further on that. But Elden Ring completely blew me away. And it really improved a lot on the Soulsborne formula, making combat feel even more fluid and enjoyable, allowing players more freedom for their builds they want to use, such as the new Ash of War system, similarly to how the weapon skills worked in Dark Souls 3, but even more customizable. And the world felt a lot more open-ended. So basically, when you beat the starting area and talk to the guy in the funny mask who calls you a virgin, you're pretty much free to go wherever the fuck you want. Although how well that'll end up for you is another story. And this is definitely a welcome change from what Dark Souls 3 struggled with, where the world progression system was far more linear than Dark Souls 1 and 2. Although, you still can't see everything from the get-go, so like you'll have to kill Radahn if you want to go to Nokron or Nokstella, I think, and you have to fight some of the Shard Bearers so you can fight Morgott, which will then allow you to go to the mountaintop of the Giants, which will then allow you to go to Crumbling Far Missoula, and you get where I'm going with this. But this was a much needed change of pace from the typical open world games that you typically see nowadays, that all more or less use the same formula. Ubisoft. Sorry, I don't know why I did that. But unlike typical open world games that may give you the freedom to go wherever you want while holding your hand and directing you where to go at the same time while bloating your map with content, after you beat the starting area in Elden Ring and the first boss, lol, Soldier of Godric, isn't that funny guys? He's the most hardest boss in Elden Ring. Anyways, you can pretty much go wherever you want. No, seriously, like, you're dumped into the world of Elden Ring, and your only true objective is to become the Elden Lord, and you're pretty much encouraged to explore the world as much as you can, and pick up the pieces of the story yourself, while also unlocking useful features and such. And there were a lot of new elements and aspects of Elden Ring that I enjoyed, such as the changement of movements, finally allowing me to jump and crouch without needing to play Sekiro, weapon attacks now having their own kind of combos, motherfucking twin blades? No, seriously, like, this is my favorite type of weapon in literally any fantasy game. And power stancing returns from Dark Souls 2, although it kind of works more how, like, the paired weapon system works from Dark Souls 3. Spirit Ashes? Fuck you, I think they're cool. Bosses being awesome as hell? And there's just so many things I enjoyed about it. However, there were a few things I didn't enjoy, such as easy anti-cheat making it really hard to play with harmless mods. No, you have to play offline if you want to play at more than 60 FPS. You have to play offline if you want to make your character actually look like Guts from Berserk. Why? You just do, okay? You just do. And, sorry, I was getting off topic. Reused bosses in some areas, although, to be fair, a lot of the Souls games did this to an extent, like Bloodborne with the Chalice dungeons. Another thing I didn't like was quality builds being pretty much pointless this time around, and I'm saying this as a quality fan. The existence of the Moonveil and abundance of sorcery using sorcery builds in PvP, and the Scythe moveset, at least compared to Dark Souls 3. But other than that, I absolutely love the game, and while this isn't necessarily a review, this is more so my experience with playing the game, which in a way could be considered a review, but if you think about it. Anyways, let's go back to the launch of the game on February 25th, 2022. Well, technically the 24th, since the servers went live on the Thursday evening. Anyways, I had Elden Ring pre-ordered, preloaded, and ready to go, and I was pretty much glued to my screen that day waiting for the gray button that said coming soon to play now, and once that button changed to the glorious blue color, at least I think it's blue from the top of my head, I was ready to go. Although I probably should have showered before I started playing. But I loaded up the game, made my character, decided to make a female vagabond, sorry, I meant body type B vagabond, and I was ready to take on the lands between. I rose from my grave like in most Souls games, but instead of rising from a tombstone like in Dark Souls or leaving the average British hospital in Bloodborne, or having a coherent introduction to my character's backstory in Sekiro, I arose from a mausoleum, which is different from a grave somehow. Then I did the tutorial area, and this time I had two different boss fights. Different from fighting... God, I am mispronouncing that word so much. Different from fighting one boss and exploring a tutorial area. But then I talked to an NPC that vaguely spoke about the world, but unlike Dark Souls, he said I had no bitches. And then I touched Grace, which is different from the bonfires, which is different from Dark Souls. Okay, this game is basically Dark Souls 4, but you know what? I'm more than okay with that. And, oh my god, I almost spilled that. And I had an absolute blast exploring Lingrave in the beginning of the game. Just exploring the landscape, taking in the beautiful sights, and enjoy attacking every enemy I could possibly find. No, not that one. We don't talk about that one till later. By the way, I forgot to mention the game had a few optimization issues at launch where I had quite a few frame drops, particularly when the screen got busy or when I was fighting really big bosses like the Tree Sentinel, but it wasn't like Cyberpunk levels of jank, so it wasn't too bad, and I think they took care of those issues pretty quickly. So when I went into the game, I was originally going to go for a quality build, like I usually do, but like I mentioned before, quality builds aren't really so good in Elden Ring this time around due to the larger presence of magic, as well as bleed builds, pure strength builds, and dexterity builds just being far more viable in general, and I was finding that the base Twin Blade wasn't really doing it for me, so I experimented with a variety of different playstyles before I decided to settle on a strength and faith hybrid build. Now, To be honest, I've never really used magic in any of the Soulsborne games, except I think the closest that comes to that is, the only spell I have in the Demon Souls remake is the Evacuate spell, because I didn't want to keep buying, whatever the equivalent of, Homeward Bones are. I can't remember on the top of my head. And also, I wasn't really a fan of the way, sorcery spells felt and just how int felt in general, but when I tried Faith, God, I was hooked. There was just so much when it came to Faith in Elden Ring compared to its equivalent sorceries, which were all spells related to dealing magic damage. I found incantations to be a lot more flexible and versatile. For example, fire-related incantations? You got it. Lightning-related incantations? All yours. Hell, you've even got incantations related to holy damage, as well as spells related to poison, bleed, and even Scarlet Rot. And did I mention that all of the buffs that you can use with incantations, especially with Flame Cleanse Me, Flame Grant Me Strength, Golden Vow, Blood Flame Blade, God, I fucking loved it. And let me tell you how useful Flame Cleanse Me was for the Lake of Rot. God, I hate that zone. And need I mention that a lot of the best weapons in the game scale with faith, or at least have a faith requirement? For example, after I killed Rykard, the Blasphemous Blade was pretty much the only weapon I used for the rest of the playthrough, so it was basically the game's hidden easy mode. And at the time, I've gained quite a liking for the Holy Warrior / Paladin archetype in RPGs as of late, mainly because a year before I was guessing that the melee DPS for Final Fantasy Endwalker would be Templar. I mean, I was wrong, but even then I still gained a liking for that type of archetype, and liked it in Elden Ring I did. And, well, I say that as I primarily used a weapon called the Blasphemous Blade in Elden Ring, but whatever. And kind of like how I went with the Usurpation of Fire ending in Dark Souls 3, before I sold my Xbox One and had to restart on PC, I aim to get the Age of Stars ending for my first playthrough. And it looked like everybody else had the same idea. Man, the power of simping really is dangerous. And while it was definitely the easiest of the Soulsborne games I've played, since it's a lot more accessible, open-ended, and it provides more tools to ensure victories, like summons, it was certainly no cakewalk either. And while I did miss a lot of my first playthrough, I definitely had my fair share of trials with certain bosses, especially at the beginning of the game with Margit, Godric, Moog, Melania, the Magma Worms, and especially the fucking Godskin Apostles. But their theme song is a masterpiece, so it was absolutely worth the suffering. And even with all the crutches I had, like the Blasphemous Blade, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Mimic Tears, I could not even beat the last 3 bosses without summoning other players. But honestly, I'm kinda glad I did, because it felt pretty badass to form a group of warriors armed with swords and garbed in, well, nothing. It felt pretty badass to join forces to defeat Hoarah, Radagon, and claim the Elden Ring once and for all. Until I decided to be Ranni's footstool and turn everyone in the world into an int user. And then I proceeded to finish up the other bosses I missed, like Moog, Melania. There was more of them, right? Nah, no way. Although I did try visiting this funny little place underground before the final boss with all the spikes and deranged looking corpses, but I got frustrated and gave up. There probably wasn't anything important down there, right? And then I decided to do what any sane human being would do after dumping 120 hours into Elden Ring. I decided to dump 150 more hours into it. And this time, I decided to become the villain I swore to destroy, but failed horribly when it came to fighting them in PvP. I knew just what to do. I did the unthinkable and decided to switch to a Dex Arc build for my second playthrough. Okay, well, I lied a little bit because I switched before I fought Moog and Melania, but that's not important. And now, I knew that I was on top of the world. You know, for a whole 3 weeks before they nerfed the hell out of Rivers of Blood. But honestly, that's okay, because I wasn't really a fan of katanas in Elden Ring, but I knew what weapon was right for me. Remember how I said I was the most excited to try the twin blades in Elden Ring? Well, yep, I pretty much used Eleanor's pole blade for most of my second playthrough in Elden Ring. Although when it came to occult-infused weapons, I did use 2 scavenger curve swords a lot, and the cross naginata as well, aka the only spear in the game that I had a fun time using. And I probably had more fun this playthrough than I did in my first playthrough, especially with Eleanor's pole blade. I mean, what's not to love about it? Its appearance, the moveset, the bleed damage, the Ash of War, the unique heavy attack where you do that spinning shit. That looks anime as fuck, and I love it. And this time around, I decided to do my best to explore everything that there was to the game. So all the hidden areas I missed in my first playthrough, all the bosses I missed like Placidusax, Fortisax, both of the Ancestor Spirits, and there are some that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But I also did a few of the quest lines like Millicent's, Vare's, Fia's, although there were some that I missed too, like I didn't really do Dung Eaters, same with Blackguard, Big Boggarts, Hyetas, or Garanks, if I'm even saying some of those names right. Oh, you ask me how I got some of their items? I may have used the Grand Merchant mod. I know, I'm sorry. But this time around, I definitely took my time, and rather than simply progressing through the game, I was more invested in exploring new playstyles this time around, since I bought so many Larva Tears thanks to the mods. And it was really cool to see all the combinations that you could try. Like I did Pure Strength, Strength and Arcane, Dexterity and Faith, Pure Faith, Instant Faith builds, Lightning builds, Madness builds, Flame Art builds. I did my best to experiment and play around with all of the different playstyles, and I've honestly had a lot of fun checking out all the different ways you could play Elden Ring. Although, no matter what, I would always end up going back to my trusty Darth Maul lightsaber. Although I would say that Strength, Faith, and Pure Strength are up there as some of my favorites, the latter of which is what I started my third playthrough as, but more on that later. And I spent a lot of time exploring the lands between while playing around with these builds, and did I also mention that I did a lot of PvP this time around? And I mean a lot of fucking PvP. Although I mainly just stuck to the duels in front of the Raya Lucaria Academy entrance or the Colosseums, once they added those in the update, because every single fucking time I've tried to invade somebody, they always had like 2 or 3 other people with them, and they were all using these broken ass meta builds, spamming their sorceries while I was completely outnumbered. Yes, probably was a skill issue, but come on, can I at least get a one fair invasion where I don't end up getting gangbanged? Is that too much to ask? I'm getting a bit too emotional here. But anyways, regardless, I definitely had a lot of fun playing PvP for the most part. Granted, my main issues were in regards to the connection, although Dark Souls 3 kind of had this problem too. And like I said, with the broken builds, it got really tiring dealing with the constant people running Moonveil and sorceries in PvP, where they would do nothing but run away from you while they sling their spells and proceeded to spam Moonveil's Ash of War when you got close enough. And I'll admit, it really got annoying when I found myself fighting against those guys. At least with bleed builds, those fuckers will fight you head on. Mostly. But in builds, they always run away and fight from afar. What? No, I'm not biased towards bleed builds at all. No, screw off. Okay, on to the next part. So, along with experimenting with new playstyles and PvP, I played around with quite a few mods for Elden Ring as well, and there were some mods I used that turned me into other characters like 2B, Griffith, and I installed a few mods that changed the ways weapons worked, or completely revamped them entirely. Like the Frenzied Reaper Scythe, which basically turns the scythe into a new madness weapon and gives you Gehrman's moveset. Or this mod that adds the bending from Avatar. So what I'm saying here is you can literally go to Crumbling Farm Azula while playing as Azula. And also, I'd be an idiot not to mention the Carrion Combos Warriors mods, which essentially turned the game into a hack and slash. Like, paired with the 2B mod I had, I basically turned the game into Nier Automata. And before I finished my second playthrough with the most based Elden Ring ending there was, may chaos take the world, by the way, I decided to work towards unlocking all the achievements I had in the game, and a lot of it goes back to what I was saying with exploring the world as much as I could, so I reloaded a previous save file so I can get the normal ending instead of Ranni's, or I did a Necrophile's questline just so I could fight a dragon and unlock the last achievement, so basically I tried to do as much as I can, and after that, I finally 100%ed Elden Ring. Well, I mean, not quite if we want to get technical, but at least according to Steam I did. And I felt really proud of myself here because this is the only game in my Steam library that I've gotten all the achievements on, aside from The Walking Dead, New Frontier, Shatterline, and perhaps the most challenging game I've ever played in my life, Borderless Gaming. And even now, after having at least 272 hours on Elden Ring at the time of recording this video, do I still like playing this game, and do I still want to keep playing it? Absolutely! Well, I mean, I might step back from it a little bit and take a break from it so I don't burn myself out on the game before the Shadows of the Erdtree DLC comes out, although I'm really looking forward to this, by the way, and once more of it gets announced, I probably will get back into the game some more. But I would dare say that Elden Ring is not just my game of the year from last year, but easily one of my favorite games of all time, and I don't see myself quitting anytime soon. And like I said already, I already started Journey 3 with my character now running a pure strength build that I like to call the Male Human Fighter. More elaboration on that later. Of course there isn't going to be elaboration. But I am going to be winding down a little bit on that so I don't burn myself out. But I am going back to playing some of the older Dark Souls games like Dark Souls 1, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, the Dark Souls 3 DLCs. But that's where I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you all for sitting around this long and listening to me ramble about my obsessions while tripping over my own words at least a dozen times. First I did it with a Weeb's wet dream, then I did it with a Scaly's wet dream, and now I'm doing it with a Berserk fan's wet dream. I don't know what you all see in me, but I appreciate your support. And comment down below whether or not you've all been liking Elden Ring and how many hours you currently have on the game. And until next time, I will see you guys soon. Probably when I find another thing to obsess over and share my addiction with you. Alright, have a good one, lads.